Welcome to this edition of Weather to Watch on Friday, the 7th of February. Lots of winter weather to talk about, multiple storms, some in the short term, and a few next week as well. Well, what I'm watching is a snowstorm that will eventually move into the northeast. So it's ongoing and soon will be occurring in the northeastern part of the U.S. Pretty big snow, it looks like. The winter temperatures are prevailing. The winter temperatures have come back. It is very cold across the northern plains over the next several days. Cold enough to support more widespread winter precipitation across much of the country. And so that warmth we had last week is kind of worn off a little bit, except down in the southeast. And a wintry storm track kind of feeds into what I was just saying, and we'll take a look at that as well. Well, we'll take a look at this visible satellite loop of the lower 48, which is always kind of a neat shot, just shown in true color here. And it's interesting, there are actually two storms on this map. At first glance, it might look like this one right here looks like it's more important, or at least more vigorous. It's not, actually. This one in the northern plains certainly is, and these two are going to kind of go like this and like that. And guess what? Storm potential is very high for heavy snows in the northeast as a result of all that. If you take a look at the 500 millibar flow, first of all, it's very fast flow, and it's so fast, as a matter of fact, that we'll talk about some of these wind gusts that are occurring out here through Wyoming, parts of northern Colorado. But anyway, this system right up through here is the one that's lifting the air out ahead of it and producing snow currently in the Dakotas, and it's the very same system that will whip across the northern U.S., literally, and create and merge with this system down here and create that storm in the northeast for sure. We'll take a tour of the United States looking at radar and also at some storm reports that have come in within about the last 3 hours or so. We'll start in the northeast because that section of the country had snow totals from a storm that has departed. Still some just light flurries blowing around there just to the east of Maine, a little bit still in Maine. These are lake effect snow showers here that are still blowing off of Lake Ontario. Not so much on Lake Erie, just a little bit of banding going on there, not a whole lot. Certainly the center of attention is this snow here in the northern plains. I'll zoom in on that a little bit, and you can see pretty good snow south of Bismarck, north of Pierre, South Dakota, approaching the Minneapolis-St. Paul area. And if you look at the storm reports for this, we are seeing a few snow reports. There's a half foot right there. Near St. Gertrude, North Dakota, just to give you an example. We also have a weak weather system moving through the mid-Mississippi River Valley here. This is mostly rain. And by the way, this is going to connect up with that snow in the northern plains and create a little bit of havoc in the northeast. And we'll review storm number 2 here in just a minute. And so that is that. And the only other thing I want to show you, it's not radar related, but since the storm reports are on here, these are, again, it's been very windy through portions of Wyoming, 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts there near Rawlins, Wyoming, off to the northeast of Salt Lake City at Evanston. And we're looking at a 67-mile-per-hour wind gust. So very, very breezy in southern parts of Wyoming, parts of Utah, and northern Colorado as well. Well, now that you looked at radar, we can kind of look at the high-resolution radar for the next just a little bit less than 48 hours, actually. And it shows clearly how this storm is going to evolve from the northern stream storm and that rain there down to the south, converging into one. There's a little layer of ice in there, too, in Pennsylvania. You just had that the other day, quarter-inch totals of ice in some areas. So that's, in the short term, through the next couple of days, the big storm certainly to talk about. So let's take a look at this in detail. This is the NAM snow. Actually, it's a precipitation type, but it's all snow. 6 p.m. tonight, actually, so pretty good little snows. Right along the South Dakota, North Dakota border here, a little bit of accent, a little heavier snow moving into here, and that's going to be a theme as we go to the next slide. This is midnight tonight, so a pretty good snow band here. And then we go through 6 a.m. Saturday, still snowing in Minnesota. And in fact, this keeps moving off toward the east, certainly to meet up with that storm down to the south and produce that New England snow. We're looking at pretty good snows, 3, 4, 5-inch totals, very common through here, right again along the north-South Dakota border, right through the heart of Minnesota. Just north of Eau Claire, we have a little half-foot snow band right there. So that is a pretty vigorous weather system as well. as you might expect, winter weather advisories and winter storm warnings currently just right there, but they may extend that winter storm warning to include portions of west central Wisconsin, certainly. So, how has this evolved to the northeast? Let's take a look at that. So, 6 a.m. on Saturday, this weather system that I was showing you in the mid Mississippi Valley is right there. And then we go on to the next slide, and this all kind of merges at 6 p.m. Saturday. So this is just a sleet here, not freezing rain. This might be. So sleet is not as bad. Sleet is like little pellets of snow, whereas freezing rain, nobody wins. So I don't see a lot of orange on here, but this is occurring in the same area it just had it. But extensive snows all throughout New England and New York State and parts of Pennsylvania. And if we go to midnight on Saturday, this is when it really kicks in. We have a low offshore there south of Long Island, and that's what's going to really start to rack up some of these snow totals. How much, you might ask? Well, here are some of the totals. We're looking at 6 to 9 inches in this area right through here, including Boston. This is the NAM's idea of how much it'll snow, 8 inches there in Boston. So pretty good snow, and this is one of those snows where there's enough cold for it to just simply go right off the coast. There's no wraparound warm air with this one. It's all snow. And as you might expect, a winter storm warning. Again, I think they're probably going to extend that eastward here. It may have already after I've recorded this. Well, from the 10th through the 14th, which is basically Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we're looking at, in terms of significant weather, cold, with freeze warnings in effect now in parts of California. Very cold across the northern plains here. Is it really abnormal? Yes. Most of the country, though, is just going to be winter cold. So what I mean by that is it's a little bit below normal, but not terribly below. Now, some of this air up here in the Dakotas and Montana is actually much below normal, but this actually sinks down pretty far south, and that's what's going to help feed some other weather systems that we'll discuss here in a minute. But these are the high temperatures by the Weather Service offices, and the colors, by the way, are not the actual temperatures, but they're departures from normal. So you can kind of see real quick, greens and blues are where it's a little bit below normal, darker blues are where it's a lot below normal, and the southeast continues to enjoy very balmy weather with 80s covering Florida, even into southern Georgia on Wednesday. But much of the country is going to look at that with envy, probably. Here's just the day-by-day, 10-day forecast for, this is the GFS model's idea anyway, for Fargo, North Dakota. And you can see not one single day in the next 10 days is going to be above freezing there, with many days, including here on Tuesday, and much of next weekend after that are going to be single-digit high temperatures. So very, very cold indeed up in that part of the world. Well, this is the total precipitation, the so-called quantitative precipitation forecast. What that means is how much will total up over Wednesday and Thursday. And these are pretty significant totals here, 2 to 3 inch totals common in southern Arkansas, stretching eastward into Mississippi and northern Alabama. Now, what's interesting about this is that this is all, when it says total precipitation, it means even if part of this is snow, this is a forecast for what happens when you take ice or snow and melt it down and put it in a rain gauge. So it doesn't actually show winter precipitation type, but that's what the next series of discussions are going to focus on. Well, the last stop today is to look at the GFS model. It's just kind of interesting to watch the future. And we can already review 2 of the storms that I've talked about. This map, by the way, is precipitation type and along with isobars, so we can see areas of high and low pressure. So this starts out pretty much today. And you can see, I'll go over and just start up the motion here. You can see that system right about there in the northern plains. That's the one we just reviewed that's moving across Minnesota. And portions of Wisconsin. That one, of course, is combining with this precipitation area right here. And then if I move this forward a little bit, you can see this is what becomes that big storm in the northeast that we already reviewed, that one. So what's interesting is right about here, this is getting into, let's go advance that a little bit more. That's Sunday afternoon, right about there. Big old Arctic high is parked over the northern plains right here. And this interface between this cold air and some developing precipitation, so this little track right in here is where winter could rear up again. And on the southern end of that, rain will move this a little bit further into the future. So the first little concern is right through there. That's Monday. And I think I've said this before. I live on where that ice is showing up there, and the orange and the purple colors in Missouri and Arkansas. So that's one system. That moves on to the east and becomes a pretty good snow, possibly in the Ohio River Valley, heading toward West Virginia. Rain's developing in that area from Texas to just south of that snow, and you should know that this rain is sort of a training kind of rain. What that means is that it reforms over the same area, and then we have another little surge right there, and then still another one right there. I believe that's Wednesday in the afternoon right there. So again, I'm looking at that with some concern. And this one tracks almost identical to the last one. Snow's maybe a little more north on that one. Anyway, it's always kind of entertaining to watch what the models will do. But I will say that that double-barreled kind of snow rain system has been showing up consistently. So it looks like there's a little bit of validity. Maybe the timing's off a little bit, but certainly that's the last thing we should be watching in the short to medium term in terms of interesting weather and winter weather as well. Thanks, as always, for checking out this edition of Weather to Watch. Lots of interesting weather coming up. The next update is coming up in 2 days. Be careful out there and see you then.